The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. And out walked Denzel Washington, no smile, no pleasantries, just presence. He didn't need a script. He didn't need applause. He was there for something bigger than respect. He was there for truth. Jay-Z had just wrapped up a 10-minute video montage of his empire, from selling mixtapes in Brooklyn to owning champagne labels and streaming platforms. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. But Denzel didn't stand. He stepped forward. "Sean Carter," he said, slowly, letting the name linger in the air like smoke. "You climbed out of the gutter, and I respected that. You built an empire. But somewhere along the way, you started selling illusions instead of truth." The audience tensed. You could hear the camera shutters stop. Even Beyoncé shifted in her seat. Denzel's voice dropped lower. "You tell kids to chase power, but you never tell them the cost. You glorify struggle like it's a brand, while dining with men who profit from their pain." Jay-Z leaned back, visibly caught off guard. He wasn't expecting a tribute to turn into a trial. "You made billions," Denzel continued. "But how many schools did you build? How many prisons did you help close? You sold your story to corporations, and called it freedom." There was no applause now. Just silence. Tense. Dense. Electric. Jay-Z finally rose from his chair. "You really came up here to throw dirt on me?" he asked, his voice tight. Denzel didn't blink. "No, I came up here to stop the worship of false kings." The room was frozen. This wasn't entertainment. This was a firestorm, live, unfiltered, and just getting started. The studio lights dimmed just slightly as Denzel leaned in. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Every syllable hit like a hammer wrapped in silk. "So you're untouchable now, huh? You build an empire on broken backs and call it genius?" The crowd froze. Jay-Z blinked twice, unsure whether to smile or defend himself. He chose defense. "Man, you don't know what I've sacrificed. You think I got here by accident?" Denzel didn't flinch. "You got here because people stopped asking questions. Because you sold them a dream while buying silence." Jay-Z's posture shifted, shoulders squared, jaw clenched. For the first time, he looked less like a mogul and more like a man being judged. The moderator tried to step in. "Let's remember this is a conversation, not a courtroom." Denzel turned slightly, eyes piercing. "Courtrooms are for justice. This is about truth." A few in the crowd gasped. Phones were out. Clips already uploading. The tension was electric, pure, live-wire confrontation. Jay-Z exhaled, then leaned forward, dropping the charm. "You preach like you're the voice of the people. But what have you built?" Denzel's answer was slow, measured. "I've built something money can't buy, accountability. And I didn't do it by turning suffering into a soundtrack." That line hit like a tidal wave. The audience collectively inhaled, stunned. Jay-Z muttered something under his breath, but the microphones caught it. "You just mad no one's chanting your name anymore." Denzel smiled, not with his mouth, but with that knowing look that says I just won, and I didn't even raise my voice. If the chant is built on lies, let it die in silence. Boom. Even the moderator sat back, speechless. A producer in the back whispered, "We've got a viral segment right here." No music. No cut to break. Just the sharp breath of a studio audience watching two icons collide, and realizing only one had come to speak the truth. Jay-Z tried to laugh it off. A chuckle, half-hearted, half-hurt, escaped his lips. "You sound like a preacher with a chip on his shoulder." But Denzel's gaze didn't waver. "No, I sound like someone who's tired of seeing trauma turned into merch." The crowd shifted. Murmurs grew louder. A woman in the third row whispered, "He's really going there." Jay-Z crossed his arms. His voice dipped into a darker tone. "So what, you want to erase hip-hop? Erase what we've built?" Denzel leaned forward. "Hip-hop was built on rebellion, on voice. What you built is an empire of curated outrage, packaged, polished, profitable." That landed hard. The studio went quiet again. Every word now felt heavier, like truth dragging a chain across the floor. Jay-Z raised a finger. "You think you're the only one who sees the game? I've given more opportunities than you've given speeches. I've put people on." Denzel nodded. "You've put people on payrolls. I've put people on paths." Then he paused, letting the silence do the work. "There's a difference." The air thickened. Even the cameras seemed to draw closer, as if sensing history in the making. The moderator gulped and forced a grin. "Gentlemen, perhaps we..." Denzel raised a hand. "Calm. Controlled. Powerful. You know what's funny? The louder your brand screams about injustice, the quieter your silence gets when it's inconvenient." Jay-Z's jaw locked. He was losing the room, and he knew it. "You talk like I'm the enemy." Denzel looked straight through him. "No. I talk like someone who remembers when the microphone was a weapon, not a trophy." Gasps. Audible. Electric. The room wasn't just watching a conversation, it was witnessing a reckoning. And only one of them seemed prepared for the weight of the truth. Jay-Z's eyes darted around the studio. For the first time in the interview, he wasn't speaking, he was calculating. The audience wasn't clapping anymore. They weren't smiling. They were thinking. That was the danger. Denzel had turned the spotlight from fame to consequence, and Jay-Z felt the temperature drop. "So what now?" Jay finally said, his voice quieter, more deliberate. "You want me to shut it all down? Pull the plug on everything?" Denzel shook his head slowly. "I want you to stop selling pain like it's perfume." A sharp gasp echoed from the back. The moderator froze mid-cue card. No one had expected this level of precision, this surgical dismantling of a cultural icon. Jay-Z tried to recover. "You don't understand what it's like to build something from nothing, then carry it on your back for decades." Denzel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, I understand it perfectly. I just didn't forget where I came from once I got to the top." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in sharp, knowing murmurs. Like a courtroom hearing a key piece of evidence. Jay-Z looked down. For the first time, the mogul looked mortal. He clenched his fists under the table, not to fight, but to hold something in. "This isn't fair," he muttered. "You don't know the half of it." Denzel's voice lowered. "You're right. I don't. But I know this, when people are bleeding in the streets, your silence is louder than any beat you've dropped." Jay-Z leaned back. His armor was cracking. The blueprint was failing. And Denzel? He wasn't done. "I came here to tell the truth. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's not on me. That's on the mirror." For a split second, Jay-Z said nothing. Then, "Maybe it's time we both looked into one." Denzel didn't blink. "I've been looking into it for years. That's why I can sleep." And just like that, the balance of power in the room shifted. Permanently. The studio, now dense with tension, seemed suspended in a moment that refused to pass. Jay-Z sat stiffly, his fingers interlocked tightly, his watch glinting under the lights, but his usual composure had cracked. The mogul who once dominated arenas was now cornered by something far more dangerous than controversy: clarity. "You act like I'm the villain," Jay-Z muttered, barely audible, but the mic caught every syllable. Denzel raised his eyebrows, his voice unwavering. "I'm not here for heroes or villains. I'm here for accountability. The audience reacted, not with applause this time, but with nods, with silent affirmation. They weren't just watching, they were witnessing. Jay leaned forward, almost pleading now. You don't know what it's like to be a symbol to millions. The pressure, the politics. I do, Denzel interrupted. But I never mistook being a symbol for being untouchable. The moderator tried to interject, fumbling with cue cards, clearly rattled. But the moment had its own gravity, and no card could redirect it. Do you know what broke me? Denzel asked, more to the room than to Jay. A 12-year-old boy came up to me and said, "My dad's in jail, but at least he got to live like the rappers." That's what he thought success looked like. Chains. Guns. Silence. Jay-Z winced. Denzel continued, softer now, but more dangerous in its restraint. We shaped the soundtrack of a generation. But somewhere, we let the pain become entertainment. And you built a business off it. The crowd was breathless. Even the cameramen, usually invisible, were motionless, their lenses trembling slightly. Jay-Z looked down at his hands. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was damning. So what do you want from me? He asked, finally. I want you to use your voice like it still matters, Denzel replied. Because it does. But not for you. For them. The lights above flickered slightly. The air in the room had shifted again, this time toward reflection. And outside the studio? Twitter was already on fire. Outside the studio, hashtags like #DenzelTruthBomb and #JayZExposed were trending at lightning speed. Inside, Jay-Z seemed to wrestle with a reality he hadn't prepared for, a challenge not from a rival rapper or a business competitor, but from a man of principles, armed with truth. The moderator, pale and visibly overwhelmed, attempted to steer the conversation. Perhaps we can redirect, talk legacy, maybe? Jay-Z waved him off. His voice was lower now, less aggressive and more raw. You think I haven't donated, supported causes, tried to make things better? I'm sure you have, Denzel responded. But money doesn't cancel the message. And when the message is, get rich or die trying, what happens when the kid dies trying? Jay's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Denzel leaned back in his chair. You ever wonder why the people who suffer the most are always the ones turned into anthems? Because we've made them digestible. You wrapped pain in platinum. I called it what it is, wounds that never healed. Jay-Z took a breath, clenched his jaw. He had taken beatings before, verbal, business, political, but this was different. This was soul deep. So what now? He asked, this time genuinely. What would you do? Denzel didn't flinch. Stop building platforms off suffering. Start amplifying stories of resilience, growth, rebuilding. We don't need more ballads of brokenness, we need blueprints for healing. That last word, healing, hung in the air like incense. For the first time, the crowd didn't move, didn't cheer, didn't even whisper. They were absorbing. Jay-Z nodded slowly. A crack in the armor. Not defeat, just maybe, acceptance. Denzel looked into the camera. You don't have to be perfect. But you better be honest. And with that, the screen faded to a live feed of online comments pouring in. Denzel's not just acting, he's activating. Jay-Z just got baptized in truth. This isn't a debate. It's a wake-up call. The silence after Denzel's last words wasn't just pause, it was pressure. Even the air conditioning sounded louder. Then, slowly, Jay-Z raised his head and finally, spoke with a mix of defiance and fatigue. I never asked to be anyone's savior. I told my story. That's it. Denzel didn't look away. Didn't blink. You told your version, he said evenly. But when the version becomes a model, it's no longer just a story. It's a mirror. And millions look into it trying to see who they're supposed to be. Jay-Z gestured toward the crowd, his voice gaining force again. So what? I retire. Apologize for every lyric? Cancel myself so the internet can say I evolved? Denzel shook his head. No. You evolve because it's time. Because silence is complicity. Because too many of us stood by while the image of black success got twisted into a soundtrack of survival at any cost. The room stirred. The audience, many of them artists, fans, thinkers, were leaning in now. This wasn't just entertainment. It was reckoning. Jay-Z took a breath, but before he could speak again, Denzel leaned forward. Look, I know what you came from. I know what you built. That took genius. But genius without guidance becomes danger. You've got a throne, yes. But ask yourself, what are you ruling over? A culture of kings or a kingdom of corpses? The words landed hard. Jay-Z looked away. Not because he was beaten, but because he had nothing left in that moment but the echoes of truth. The moderator was frozen, caught between two giants. Someone backstage signaled to cut to commercial, but the director refused. The feed stayed live. And then, Denzel said something no one expected. You still have time. But not forever. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even judgment. It was a warning dressed in wisdom. And outside? The world was still buzzing. Screens lit up across the country. From barbershops in Atlanta to dorm rooms in Oakland, the conversation had changed. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about legacy. In the hours that followed the broadcast, America didn't sleep. Clips of the confrontation between Denzel and Jay-Z flooded every platform. The hashtags trended faster than wildfire, hashtag Denzel speaks, hashtag Jay-Z reckoning, hashtag culture check. The View, CNN, Fox News, even ESPN weighed in. Everyone had an opinion, and none were quiet. In a New York boardroom, executives at Roc Nation scrambled. Phones were ringing non-stop. Publicists were issuing preemptive statements. A nervous assistant whispered, "We need to control this, fast." Meanwhile, in LA, an activist group launched a live-stream discussion titled, "When Wealth Stops Speaking for Us." Thousands tuned in. One speaker said, "Jay-Z gave us ambition. Denzel gave us accountability." At the Academy, a closed-door conversation took place. Denzel's influence had always been undeniable, but now it was something else, seismic. One veteran producer murmured, "That wasn't a performance. That was leadership." But not everyone celebrated. On a talk show, a slick-haired commentator smirked, "Denzel just canceled the man who put Brooklyn on the map. Maybe next time, he'll cancel hip-hop altogether." The crowd laughed, but uncomfortably. And yet, Denzel remained silent. No tweets. No press. No follow-up interviews. Instead, he showed up at a community college in Newark. Unannounced. No cameras. Just him, a chalkboard, and a classroom full of stunned students. His words? Simple. Don't idolize people. Investigate them. And then become better. A photo leaked from that moment. Denzel in a worn blazer, speaking with passion. That image, more than any meme, cut through the noise. Because while others played the game of PR, he returned to the roots, direct, humble, unshakable. And Jay-Z? Still no statement. Just a single photo on his feed. An old black and white shot of him and Biggie in the studio. Caption, "Legacy ain't just what you leave. It's what you correct." The nation was split, but aware. This was no longer about right or wrong. It was about the courage to confront power, even when that power looked like you. 3 days after the storm, it happened. Denzel received an unexpected message, delivered not through his agent, not through PR channels, but by hand. A private invitation from Jay-Z himself. No cameras. No entourage. Just a date, a time, and a location, the top floor of a historic hotel in Manhattan. Discreet. Timeless. Intentionally removed from the noise. He accepted. When Denzel arrived, the hallway was silent. A butler nodded, opened the door, and there sat Jay-Z. No jewelry. No branding. No beat. Just Sean Carter, aged, alert, and waiting. The tension in the room could be sliced with a whisper. Jay-Z didn't stand. He simply gestured to the seat across from him and spoke first. I deserved it. Denzel studied him, measured, calm. You sure you understand why? Jay-Z exhaled deeply. It wasn't about the money, was it? No, Denzel replied. It never is. It's about what you sell to people who've never had a choice. For a moment, they sat in a silence heavier than any argument. Jay-Z nodded, eyes low. I forgot what it cost to climb when I started selling the ladder. Denzel leaned forward. Then build a new one. And don't name it after yourself. This wasn't a truce. It wasn't even forgiveness. It was a reckoning, two legends at the top of different towers, finally seeing what lay in the valley between them. Before leaving, Denzel said one more thing. You're not the villain. But you better stop acting like the hero. He left without a handshake. Jay-Z remained seated, staring at the untouched glass of bourbon in front of him. For once, the mogul didn't have a verse, a plan, or a spin. Just a choice. Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside that room, something had changed. The confrontation that millions had watched had now unfolded in its quietest, rawest form. And the real question lingered. What would Jay-Z do next? The sun had barely risen when Denzel appeared once more on live television. This time, it wasn't a surprise appearance or a viral confrontation. It was an invitation-only panel on systemic culture, aired nationally with no commercial breaks. And yet, the ratings exploded. The moderator nervously shuffled her papers, but Denzel didn't wait for the first question. He stood, microphone in hand, and addressed the studio, and the nation. You want to know what this is really about? Not Jay-Z. Not the music. Not the empire. It's about silence. The crowd leaned forward. The room froze again. Silence, he repeated. The kind that lets exploitation hide behind billion-dollar branding. The kind that turns poverty into aesthetics and suffering into strategy. He walked slowly across the stage, eyes scanning faces that were both inspired and unsettled. Jay-Z didn't invent that silence. But he learned to sell it better than most. Gasps. Murmurs. But he wasn't finished. And to the young people watching, remember this, it's not just about what you fight. It's about what you refuse to become while fighting. Then came his final line. Calm. Sharp. Devastating. We don't need another king. We need witnesses. The lights dimmed. The screen faded to black. No follow-up interview. No social media post. Denzel vanished from the stage like a closing line in a sacred text. That night, trending hashtags collided in chaos. Hashtag Denzel Truth. Hashtag Jay-Z Empire Falls. Hashtag No More Silence. But the man himself? He didn't tweet. He didn't explain. Because he knew, sometimes, the loudest revolution is the one that walks away after speaking the truth, and leaves the world wondering what hit it. Some words hit harder than beats. Tonight, Denzel didn't just call out a man, he challenged a system. Jay-Z's empire may be worth billions, but Denzel questioned its true cost. And when the crowd went silent, the truth got louder. Where do you stand? Drop your thoughts below and be part of the conversation that no one dares to have.